Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NewSpace Challenges and Opportunities webinar. This webinar is the second in series of our webinars that we're organizing in partnership with our distinguished partner, Krypto Labs, under what we call the GSIA, the Global Space Industry Accelerator Initiative, intending to promote innovation and reaffirming the continuity and sustainable growth of all of our space projects, despite the different challenges, whether they are local or regional or international. Falling under the umbrella of the National Space Investment Promotion Plan, which was issued by the Space Agency in 2018, the GSIA aims to position the UAE as a pioneering country in the space industry through innovation and entrepreneurship. It also seeks to nurture the sustainable UAE space industry, foster healthy national ecosystem through innovation and R&D, and contribute to the diversified and knowledge-based, but also actually innovation-based and ideation-based national economy. My name is Nasser Al-Rashidi. I'm the Director of the Space Policy and Regulation at the UAE Space Agency and the GSIA Program Director. Today, I will, inshallah, be moderating the first panel, as well as the Q&A session, along with my colleague Talal, who's going to be moderating the second session and the second panel of this, as well as helping me with the Q&A onto the end of this session today. Okay, so for those who did not attend our first webinar, that was, I think, a couple of weeks back, I would like to mention that we have discussed at that webinar space entrepreneurship, and it was more targeted to those who are entering into such field and how they can become successful entrepreneurs in the space sector specifically, and how they can create and start creating their own startups. On the second webinar this time, we are actually inviting experts and from the space industry with real experiences, startups and government entities, funds, as well as acceleration programs to discuss the latest market challenges and emerging opportunities in the new space, which refers to the recent commercialization of the space sector. The term new space, I think it's now becoming very popular, but this is really actually what it means. At the UAE Space Agency, our aim is to sustain the space sector role in impacting other industries. In the end, our KPI is how are we making an impact outside the space sector, not just within the space sector. If we work together to identify challenges within different industries, we can help entrepreneurs to identify them and thus build key solutions, innovative ones, that can assist in contributing to an innovation-based and ideation-based economy under the UAE 2071 vision, as well as the strategy for the fourth revolution, for the fourth industrial revolution. Therefore, during today's session, we would like to take a step further in identifying these challenges and opportunities. And I would like to introduce today's agenda and speakers. Can we pull the agenda? Yes. Thank you. I apologize if the writing is a little small, but you can see that we have number of panelists as well as number of discussion points that we would like to bring today. So first, I will be moderating the panel to discuss actually with government entities, accelerators, as well as fund programs, and also to take advantage of the participation of DED with us. And I will be honored to listen and discuss with the following panelists, Mr. Fahad Al-Meheri, who's the Executive Director of the Space Sector at the UAE Space Agency, Mr. Anas Izzeddin, who's the Executive Director of Krypto Labs, Mr. Salim Ben Shibaib, the Advisor of Innovation, Incubation, and SME Projects at Abu Dhabi Department of Economic Development, and Mr. Qusay Abdul Wahab, the Manager of Enterprise Development and Counseling and Monitoring at Khalifa Fund, Last but not least, Elodie Robin, the director of Gotham, and basically the Starburst acceleration program that we have in collaboration with Abu Dhabi Hub 71. Second panel will be moderated by my colleague Talal Al-Qaisi, who's the advisor of strategic projects at the UAE Space Agency, and will include the following UAE space startups, founders, and senior executives. Alan Herbert, the Vice President of Business Development and Strategy at Nanorax, Andrei Maximov, the CEO and co-founder of Precious Payload, Dr. Ali Al-Hammadi, the CEO and founder of Farmans, Dr. Marpo, the CEO and co-founder of Ain Astra, Dr. Muhammad Adnan, the CEO and co-founder of Labsoctory. After both panels, as mentioned earlier, we will wrap up with Q&A, and inshallah, we'll come to an adjoint of our webinar with fruitful outcomes, and hopefully be able to communicate interesting and valuable and beneficial messages to all participants. Okay, so please, if you have any questions for the panelists, I'm talking here to the participants in particular, write them in the Q&A panel so we can respond to them at the end of the session. Try to avoid writing your questions in the chat box, please. Also, I would like to inform you that there will be a recorded version of this webinar, and inshallah it will be available for people who would like to access it later. Okay, so now it's time to start with our first panel discussion, following up from our previous webinar series. And as acting executive director of the UAE space sector at the UAE Space Agency, I would like to ask Mr. Fahad Al-Meheri to actually elaborate a little bit about what are the key short, let's say mid or long-term visions that the UAE government is aiming to manifest to reshape the new space.
Okay, that's a loaded question. Thank you very much. Just as, again, a quick introduction to myself. So I'm Fahad Al-Meheri. I've just recently joined the UAE Space Agency. This is my second month and second week in the job. Previous to this, I really didn't know too much about space. I think I've made my own model rockets in the past. I own a telescope that I've used from time to time, but other than that, it's really been all about sort of management and pulling things together, and both in the private sector as well as the government sector, federal sector, and I've also worked internationally in different domains. So thank you, first of all, Nasser, for having me here, and Krypto Labs for supporting all of this. Going back to your question, Nasser, I guess what are the short-term, mid-term, long-term visions of the government, and really aiming to manifest to reshape the new space and support in that segment? I think it all needs to start with a long-term vision. And I think if you look at the UAE has always been able to structure some fantastic long-term strategies. And when you have those that long-term clarity, let's say, you end up being able to very quickly and easily identify what the midterm and the short-term strategy needs to be to reach that vision. I think one of the big visions that probably most of you are aware of in the space community here in the UAE is the Mars 2117. And that is, the mission to Mars to have, to make us, I guess, an interplanetary species and have habitat in Mars. Just think about that in the long term. This is a 100-year program that His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, put forward. And this is not only just a vision, but it's a challenge to humanity at the end of the day. And it's a challenge to all Arabs, and it's a challenge to us here in the UAE. Everybody is involved from the government sectors. We do not do this alone. We have several sectors that come in to support all of this. We have several committees in place. So please don't ever think it's just the UAE Space Agency trying to go at this alone. We have absolutely everybody involved that you can imagine that has anything to do with space. Now, many of you may think, well, who really else has anything to do with space when it comes down to it? And that's what I thought initially. It's like, well, you know, who else really cares too much about space? And I think this is where you start to realize now that I've been here, and you know, it's things that have become just complacent to us today. You know, you pick up your phone and you have access to your location. I mean, even Pizza Hut will tell you where the delivery is, you know, from wherever it's coming from. Your deliveries from anywhere in the world, everything's being tracked today. And all of that is only possible because of systems like navigation and because satellites are out there. You know, you look at the environmental sector and all of that, there's a huge knowledge that is gained, weather, climate change, security aspects, all of that is now being done not anymore from our own atmosphere, but from outside, from the orbit of Earth. And this is where so many different government and aspects are coming in together to be able to support this. So when we look at that long-term vision and you start looking at the midterm ones, you know, we have put together as the space agency, together with, of course, all the collaborating government entities, the UAE Space Strategy 2030. And that really lines up everything that is needed, from your policies to the regulations to the development of the resources we need to be able to get to where we want to, looking at how we can support startups, you know, individuals like yourselves who are keen today, interested, who have knowledge, who have the passion, and, you know, who want to do something different. You know, the Uae Space Agency with the centers that are being created today are all coming together to try and support your dreams. You know, we're a small country. We really hope to be able to do as much as we can, but, you know, we always need to be realistic. So what we try to do is put steps in place, and we envision what we need to do to get from one to the other. So, you know, the law has now been put in place, and of course it is so important to have that. You know, we can't be cowboys in space tomorrow and do whatever we want. We have international treaties that the UAE needs to you know, is part of, and is part two, and so we need to make sure we're respecting that. We have regulations that we have put together already from the UAE Space Agency that, you know, we don't make these things up. They're aligned with the best practices and what everybody else in the world has looked into, but we have tweaked these and customized them to our requirements, you know, and to make sure that this is something that will support us and support the growth. Because let's say if we just take the legislations from the US today, it's different. They, you know, most of them probably don't even apply to us because we don't have the industry, we don't have the capability, the growth and the size of the academia isn't there to be able to support it. So we need to make sure we relate to where we are today as a country, to relate to the size of who we are today. And it really helps us be able to put these strategies in place and grow to where we are. Our aspect today as an agency to be the matchmakers, let's say, to grow the network, to do things like we're doing right now here today, to bring guys like yourselves together, people like Dr. Adnan, you know, who have put all of this, you know, ideas and startups and has been through his paces and understands the intricacies of everything and how difficult sometimes it can be to really help foster and grow the rest of you guys, you know, and to learn from maybe his mistakes, our mistakes, and for us to all work together. And it's, you know, 17 years working. I've probably been in 10 different jobs. You know, I've moved around a lot, so I've learned a lot, I guess, from all the different sectors. And it's really important when it comes into the networking aspect, having the right partners and things, and learning from experience. So, you know, we hope to be able to be that front for a lot of the interested, you know, and not just the investors, but, you know, bring in the investors, bring in the industry, become your matchmakers, let's say, tomorrow. And, you know, we hope to be able to satisfy all of that as the Uae Space Agency, you know, and events like this, again, thank you, Nalsa, will help us make that happen. When we hear from you, your chats, your questions, hopefully this will help.
Thank you, Mohammed. And matter of fact, when you talk about a way to measure where we are and how effective our investment is, this brings me to great initiatives led by DED, who actually put and use different TRL that actually filter, that is used to filter the, you know, the different investment ventures. I would like to direct my second question to Salim bin Shabib, uh, specifically on what steps should the government and private sectors take to be involved in leading such ventures? Salim, you have the
Assalamu
floor.
alaikum. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be in this great
For being with
panel
us.
today and great discussion. I would like to jump to the point directly. We've been using TRL for quite a time. What we noticed is that the knowledge about TRL is very, I would say, limited. So, as an initiative, DED is now trying to put together a document that describes TRL. First of all, TRL is the technology readiness level. It's a scale from 1 to 9. 1 is an idea, 9 is a product ready to be deployed. It's been created initially from the space sector in the 1970s and 1980s. And we're writing the details behind this creation in the US. And then it was used in different sectors. Different TRLs are used in different sectors, and different countries created their own different TRLs. So now we're putting together a document that describes this whole thing. It helps as well different investment and funding tools. So when the TRL is very low, you need an R&D fund, you need a grant from the government. When the R&D is in the middle stage, you need some different tools. When the TRL is high, you need a VC or a, let's say, you have less risk now, and different investment tools get in the pipeline. So what we're trying to do now, Nasser, is to describe TRL, tell everybody where is it used, how is it used, which sectors use it, what is the best definition of a TRL for Abu Dhabi, for the UAE, how can we approve that TRL, who should approve it, which sector should it be used in the beginning, and which other sectors should develop their own TRLs. In another nutshell, description of what we're trying to do is put the right scale for the right product we're trying to do. Anas comes with a startup. I don't know which level of technology he's in, and I don't know how to measure that. Now, when we put everybody on the same scale, all of us can talk about the same product, the same language. Dr. Muhammad, maybe he have a new invention, he have a new product, a new startup. He comes, he have a nice persuading way of saying things. I might say, yes, I like your idea, Dr. Muhammad, while it's still in TRL 1. Yeah, I need to know in which stage this apple is at. Is it still a seed, or it's a full apple that I can take a bite of? And this is basically the TRL we're trying to develop. And I thank you, Nasser, a lot for giving us the opportunity to be part of many initiatives you've been doing.
Thank you,
What
Salim.
I've just told you about the TRL is yet to be approved by the government as an initiative and as a scale and as a different TRL stages in each sector. So it is important to have a unified scale to measure things. It is important to know what to give to a basic TRL startup or technology, middle TRL startup or technology, and later TRL startup and technology. I thank you a lot for putting this question, and this is the first time a question hits really, the point without previous agreement between the panelist and the moderator. Thank you, Nasser.
Thank you, Salim, and thanks a lot for the open, feedback, as well as to let us know that it's now going through the approval process. And I'm sure, just like space, other sectors, giving the broadness of DED and how it deals with the various sectors, Other sectors also would be very interested, and especially those entrepreneurs and those who are looking for, investments, and whether they are in the, as you said, in this very early stage or at an advanced stage. Talking to Anas, actually, Zainuddin, I have to salute you for graduating at least 3 Emirati startups. I know 2 of them was in collaboration with the Uae Space Agency last year. And I understand that there's a target of 4 at least in 2020, inshallah, maybe more. So I just wanted to ask you broadly first, is what is the actual role of an effective incubator in growing the space sector in the UAE?
Thank you, Nasser. Thank you to everyone who's joining us here today for this wonderful session. So just a very brief background.
I just want to make sure my question is clear. I can go online and read what is the role of an incubator is. And I'm asking Anas, who's a successful CEO of a fast-growing incubator in the UAE, and soon was able to graduate space startups and more to come. Really, what is an effective role of an incubator? What is not, what we cannot find written in a book, if you like to say, the recipe of an effective incubator to grow a space industry and a space startups in the UAE?
Okay, great. You just took out half of my answer, because I was going to explain a little bit about incubation and acceleration, but it's fine. We'll assume. So just very broadly, I think a lot of the fundamentals of incubators and accelerators are common, irrespective of the industry, of the vertical, which is, of course, they play an important element in the innovation cycle. They act as a catalyst for economic development. They support in diversifying the economies, commercializing technologies, creating jobs and wealth. Now, specifically when it comes to space tech, it's very unique because, yes, an incubator accelerator can put you through a program to become a successful space tech startup. But for space tech startups, there has to be much more fundamentally available to them on the ground than just an incubator accelerator. One of the most important things is, of course, an entity, an organization, a regulatory authority that is there, physically present, and is supporting. So in the UAE, of course, we have the Uae Space Agency that acts as the national regulatory body for that, and of course has the National Space Investment Plan and the Space Promotion Plan. So these are all very, very important initiatives that need to be very well structured, deployed in order for a incubator or accelerator to be able to support a startup that is in that particular domain. So that is extremely thing. The other thing is also, and what has worked in the case of Krypto Labs, is the important and unique public-private partnership between a private entity and between a governmental entity that is working in the field of space, because it has to operate as an innovation enabler in order to support the space tech startup, the entrepreneurs, and there has to be very, very specific programs. So, such as the case you mentioned about the 2 startups that came out of our collaborative program, Farman and Ain Astra, and we have both of their founders actually here with us today. What really made that successful is, of course, the full foundational support by the Uae Space Agency. And Krypto Labs is the research and the development that we did in terms of how do we take these ideas and then develop them into successful startups, of course, with the support of yourselves, and just as equally important, with the support of the local community and the local ecosystem. Because one of the things that has happened to these startups is they also received a lot of support from local, private, and governmental organizations, and this is crucial for these entities to have pilot projects. When you develop a product or a prototype, if you don't have somebody who is willing to test it or help you test it or help you work it, it'll be very difficult for you to develop. So that's one of the unique things, is the whole fully integrated ecosystem is really, it's not just the incubator or the accelerator, it's all of the components, the sum of parts, all of them acting together, all of them aligned, and all with the same vision of creating that success, which is helping the startup with all of the levels to make it be able to take its product to market and then have an effective client that is able to take on it.
Thank you, Anas, for your very open answer. And I really must iterate that, you know, the answer for this, as you mentioned, is about that the startup feel that the incubator is actually there. They actually bring the expertise, and I think partnership and access to clients, as you mentioned, is real value. I want to actually talk to the acceleration program and talk to our Starburst acceleration program that was established last year, and take advantage, of course, of the Elodie Robin, who's actually managing this program. And I wanted to ask her a question since long ago, is that why should a tech company consider doing a business and establishing a business and a local presence in the UAE versus going somewhere else in the region, in the world? You were able to bring companies and startups and promising ones in a very short time last year. And I'm sure that is a question that you had to, you know, come up with a clear answer and study for it. And I really would like to hear your views and how you communicated this to, you know, international startups and international business to come and have a local presence here in the UAE.
Hi, Nasser. Thanks for having me, and hello to everyone. Yeah, that's a good point. When Health 71 and Badala reached out to us last year and we decided to launch the accelerator program, the idea was indeed to source mainly foreign startups, international startups, and to attract them to the UAE, not only to open like a sales rep office, but really with the objective for them to bring the tech to the country to support the growth of the knowledge economy. So that was the first question, you know, like I just raised myself. How can I go to Silicon Valley, for example, and try to source and scout startups already working with NASA and tell them, you know what, just drop what you do and come to the UAE for the next 3 months. You don't know where it is, but that's fine. We'll pay you the flight ticket and you'll see it's great. And you will love the country and would like to stay there and to grow your business there and to move your team and their families in the UAE. So the way we tried to do it was really to see what the country and the government can offer to the startup scene, even if the startup scene is like quite new in the UAE, but growing very fast. And we ended up trying to source startups having a solution and a technology that can answer a couple of the current challenges that the space players have in the UAE. That was the first thing. And the second thing was that if you go to Silicon Valley, it's like pretty crowded. And if you, as Anas was saying, you need to have also the support of the regulatory body. And especially if you want to bring credibility to your company and to move on that TRL scale, you need to have like pilot projects, you need to have your technology used and validated by the people who knows. And that's how we manage to work on this with the great support of the Uae Space Agency and the different R&D centers, and to get really the backup of the government, trying to support the startups coming to the UAE and to be able to fast track that pilot project. If you want to do this kind of partnership, I'm sure with NASA or with ESA, that I know better, as I'm French, it will take you months to get this feedback and to be able to start like a relationship. Here in the UAE, we were able to start discussion in the first week of our program. And it ended up for both of our space startups with pilot projects. After, like, you have also a lot of incentives done by Abu Dhabi and Dubai government to support the growth and the settlement of startups. You have a very flexible and supportive regulation. especially putting into place by ADGM for startups and designed especially for startups. And you have also all the incentive package from Abu Dhabi government brought, for example, for Up 71, where if you're part of the program, you can be supported up to 2 years with like free access to the WeWork community and also free housing for the team. So I think that the UAE has an incredible like tools that they can offer to the startup. On one side regarding the backup and partnership with the government, and on the other side on supporting the startup to lower their cost and to really focus on their business.
Very clear. Thank you. And I hear that the second cohort is going to be announced soon.
Yes, so we just launched the application process. So if you are like a founder of space, aerospace, or defense-related business, please feel free to reach out to me, to visit our website, gotams.com, where you have all the explanation and the details about the next program, which is supposed to be launched in Q4 this year.
Wish you all success. So you mentioned something very, very, very interesting about, of course, you know, how you were able to really showcase the attractiveness of having an entrepreneur or a startup coming and creating a content, not just to come to the UAE, but actually create and grow within the UAE. And I would like to listen to Qusay Abdul Wahab from Khalifa Fund. Of course, Khalifa Fund deals with much broader scope, not only on space, but you know, in all actually fields. And recently, there is more interest into the technology and innovation field by Khalifa Fund. And I would like to hear your advice, Qusay, your advice to a company who is actually intending to establish a presence and doing business here in the UAE, based on your experience, you know, over the years and working with Khalifa Fund.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Nasser. First thing, actually, I guess, as you said, we're sector agnostic, Khalifa Fund, so we support agriculture, we support the service, we support the manufacturing, and space is one of them. Although we haven't, I think, supported. I think farming would be something that we have supported some sort, but not too many in the space sector. But in general, the kind of advice we would give is basically do your homework, try not to skip steps, because that's what a lot of the entrepreneurs, they try to kind of skip the hard steps, specifically when it comes to market research, conducting for example, establishing those relationships, knocking on doors, trying to get information or data to build their business models. Also, one of the things that we also advise is be open and try to adapt your solution and business model. And there's nothing wrong with failing. So it's okay if you fail once or twice, whatever. But as long as you fail quick and fast, then that's the best ideal situation. As an example, you need to understand, if we focus on the space sector, for example, you need to understand, and for a new startup, you need to understand the space sector market, the global scene in general, and the UAE in specific. You need to understand also who are the key players in the UAE space sector. Get in touch with them, build relationships, understand if there are challenges and or opportunities. Study those challenges and opportunities and come up with potential solutions. Build and test your proof of concept or your MVP. Remember to continuously also seek for feedback, you know. These are the kind of recommendations or advices we would give to startups.
Thank you, Qusay. Very to the point. And actually, I wanted to revert back to Muhammad Fahd Al-Mheri, from the executive director of the space sector at the Uae Space Agency. Well, Muhammad, I have a question for you. I mean, you see now the trends about creating space dedicated funds, space funds. What is there any plans for the UAE, and what is the current, let's say, landscape, and what is the plans with regards to creating or establishing, if any, a space fund in the UAE?
Thank you, Nasser. I just forgot to unmute myself there. That's a good question. Now, in terms of the Uae Space Agency, I mean, there's a lot that we have already done. And I think one of the main points is today, it's very difficult for us to be the judge and jury as to who we should be funding and who things should be, who the government money should be going forward to. But I think one of the main things how the UAE Space Agency has started is academia is always a safe investment. And this is where there has been such a huge support from the UAE Space Agency. And there have been, there's been millions already invested to support from the UAE Space Agency. This is funding that's coming from the government to be able to support. So, a great example is with the UAE University. We have supported there to set up what is today the NSSTC. This is a facility that is looking at being able to do a lot in terms of the AIT, which is the assembly, integration, and testing capabilities when it comes into satellites. There is a lot that's been done and looking into the ground station capabilities to be able to communicate with those satellites, whether it is satellites that exist today or satellites that we're planning to launch and be up in the orbit. So you see a lot of investment today has happened in the academia, and we have reached far and wide, not only here in Abu Dhabi, but universities in Dubai, universities in Sharjah, all the way to Ras Al Khaimah. And so there is a lot that's happening. We have some big agreements in place. We have CubeSats that are almost ready to launch. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think it's the first, but it is one that is coming up soon. There's a 3 cube satellite that we're hoping to launch, inshallah, in June this year, the Mizensat project. And so, we have a lot of people working behind that to make it happen. And this was purely done with professors and students within those universities. So when it comes to now looking at investing to personnel and to looking at the ideas, it's very difficult for us to actually be that person. As the government, it's tricky. Why is it that you're investing with this person and not that person? You see, these are governance questions that would always come into play. So the easy part has always been going into the academia. These are government entities. These are, also funded by the government, a lot of the universities that we're supporting. So it makes sense. It is there internally to support personnel and grow capabilities and development in the country. This is why, to be honest, we have this agreement today with Krypto Labs. This is why we have what we have today. We are really aiming to be more of an orchestrator, to be able to bring together industry, bring together angel investors, bring together, the funding community. And we're not only talking locally, we are reaching out to the international people. If you look at the scenario today, it is not the best, the best time to be looking out for investors. Everybody's holding onto their pockets today, not sure, when the light will come to be able to, invest again. But then again, maybe it's a really good time to invest. The markets are down, everything is there. It's an opportunity. So, people are ready to take risks. There are investors out there that are, of course, ready to go. There's a lot that happens here locally as well to be able to support. But this is where for us, you need to understand that we're here to really, as I mentioned, to orchestrate this. It's going to be difficult for us as a space agency to have the funds to support everything that is going out there. As good as your idea may be, we will be there to support and point you in the right direction, get you in contact, again, depending on the TRL level, it makes a huge difference. If you have a low TRL level idea, okay, this still needs a lot of work. It needs a lot of things to go through, but when it comes to, let's say, TRL 3, hey, that's a good time that we connect you guys to universities. And that's where a lot of the R&D takes place. A lot of the local testing takes place. Once you reach a TRL 7, it means that you are ready to have this product qualified, which means it is something that does what you are presenting, this product as. It does actually do that. And it's been certified, not just by you, but by a third-party vendor who has validated that technology based on standard testing and things like that. And you see, if you come to me with a product that's at TRL 7, it becomes a lot easier. I can probably quickly hook you up with an angel investor because, hey, look, all the work is pretty much done here. The guy needs, some money to get the final number of teams together, and the technology is there. It just needs to market and launch it in the right way, and it's a lot easier. And we can then help to direct you to the right people and the right investors. And and this is really what the whole aim is here today. For you guys to understand that aspect. So again, for us to invest, it's difficult. It just, the system is not in place to allow us to do that, but we are investing heavily with academia.
Mohammed, very clear. And maybe if you allow me, because I think that's one of the key things I believe as an entrepreneur or person coming from space is to understand also the funding that is happening there. So very clear that the Space Agency, in terms of funding R&D, there's a lot of projects for some of the, let's say, national missions are being funded also by the Space Agency and even supervised sometimes. But as an entrepreneur, is there funds today in the UAE that I may tap into? As I'm talking now as a space entrepreneur, as a space, there are funds in there, and how can the Space Agency, for example, support me with these funds?
Well, so this is going back to sort of what others have said on the panel. You have people like Krypto Labs, you have Radan, you have Hub 71, you have Starburst, you have Gotham's. All of these guys are available. They have access to these people. They have access to the investors and to the personnel who are keen to invest in this technology. We have been dabbing into looking at possibilities of creating our own funds as a possibility. But again, we need to take a look at the governance of that and how that could work. There is a lot that has been done in terms of encouraging these houses to create a very specific space fund, let's say, and this is how we've been trying to support that aspect. So that there has been a lot of push, let's say, in the food security area, where there's been a lot of push, and that needs to happen. Let's say in the defense sector, Tawazun has been pushing on that, and we have here in Abu Dhabi we have an offset program that is something that is set to mostly defense contractors or any major OEMs, let's say, that support the government in terms of let's say, like the airlines. You have Airbus and Boeing, all the planes that we buy off of them, they actually have an obligation back to the country to be able to support in technology. So with Tawazun, for instance, you have the aspect of the offsets. And, again, when you come into a higher TRL level, this becomes something interesting, and they can help even partner you guys up. And space is one of the new topics that they included in their new guidelines that came out in March last year, I believe. So space is definitely getting higher and higher in the agenda today, because people realize how space can support humanity, how it supports the world really in so many different ways. So that's where the interest really lies there.
Thank you, Mohammed. Very clear, and it's very interesting to see that decentralized approach in terms of different funds that today exist in the UAE for different purposes, where space entrepreneur or a space business can actually relate to that different fund, and the Space Agency here facilitating that. Salim, I have a question for you, and bear with me. Once an idea, Salim bin Shubaib, Director of the Innovation Program within the Department of Development in Abu Dhabi. Salim, once an idea or a concept is developed, whether being it's in the academic environment or the business environment, what are the mechanism to nurture, support, and move that idea into the market? How can an, let me say, inspiring entrepreneur bring research into fruition?
I don't know if that's a thesis or a question. It's a very long way.
Actually, I combined three questions in one. So But basically, I know you've done this, and I know you have an amazing program, the TIP. And I know we've seen this journey, but I really trying to extract the summary of it, because I think it will be good to hear from you, and based on numbers of scenarios and number of journeys that you have seen through the process, and your successful achievement in tips in consecutive years, every year, even higher targets and higher KPIs are achieved. And I think there's some good lessons in here that we can hear.
Okay. Let me describe the funnel first of all. We're talking about commercialization, which means taking an idea from a mind or a paper to a product or a service that someone will avail or will buy or will use.
Yes.
So the commercialization funnel is a very long and rigorous process. It also faces a curve called the valley of death. So technologies and people change and emerge. What you need to do is to be patient and to know that if your product or service is of an interest for someone, you will get the funding in a very easy way by showing the need or showing the usage of the product and service. What we've been trying to do here in DED Abu Dhabi is we've been extending support to various universities and academic researchers, not only in Abu Dhabi, but even extending that to the other Emirates, where we provide patent grant support. We support them in registering their patent to bring together a bigger pool of ideas and a bigger pool of technologies in a bucket in Abu Dhabi. This then need to be commercialized. And when you commercialize an idea, is different than commercializing a middle TRL idea. And it's different than commercializing a higher TRL idea. And you use different schemes and different, services to bring the money or bring the idea to the market. Some of the panelists already mentioned different tools. So we have now Hub 71 funding later TRL. We have people helping us to bridge the valley of death, like Krypto Lab, like Catalyst, like Start AD. So their mission is to put a bridge for the idea holder to pass from an idea to a product. Yes, exactly. It's a very lengthy process. And what we understand now is no single entity can do that alone. So what we're trying to do is to have a bigger coalition, a bigger ecosystem, whereby different people can put their mindsets, their support, their experience into the ground and help each other. The best way to reach the market is by the right mentorship and the right guidance. So if you have someone who's done it, supporting you and pulling you, your success rate is higher. And if you have if you're putting the right numbers on the PowerPoint, and not all the numbers, just the right numbers, you will hit the right investor attention. And be patient, always be patient, and try to sacrifice. A lower TRL investment would require a higher sacrifice. You give away lots of your intellectual property. While if you do it by yourself towards the end, you give lower percentages and you get, the fund. So always be positive, be precise in what you require. And for us as government, Nasser, we need to put all the sectors together in a bigger ecosystem. And we had a meeting earlier before the panel, and some of the panelists were in that meeting. And we were talking about defense tech. in one of our discussions, and that hits space. We were talking about agrotech, and that hits space as well. We're talking about ICT, and that hits space. We are all one towards one mission. And what we need to do is to be accessible and listen and learn from each other. And that's the most easiest way to describe the commercialization funnel and life cycle, which is very long, by the way. And in each sector, if you define commercialization for each sector, they will have a shorter or longer span. If you're trying to commercialize a technology in nuclear, you would need like 8 to 10 years. If you're trying to commercialize something in medicine, and especially and with the crisis of COVID-19, you know, you've seen people trying to accelerate the acceptance of the technology to be deployed on a human being, which normally takes 5 to 10 years, depending on the jurisdiction you're commercializing the technology in. If it's the US, it's a 90% test period, which will require 10 years. If it's Europe, it's 5 years. It's like 5 years. But here, what we're trying to do, we're all together, one boat. We listen to each other. We hear the pains from the inventor or the innovator or the business entrepreneur who are trying to do a commercialization activity, and directing him to the right incubator. Now we've seen Krypto app now being shaped around the aerospace ecosystem, and we like this specialization, Anas. You know, we like when people are specialized in different sectors. So I know where to guide the startup at the end of the day. I don't know if I've covered most of the 3 elements you've tasked me to do.
You have actually did. I have to say that, of course, you were able to manage the time, because I know it's a big questions, but I think your key messages are very clear in here. Partnership, having the right mentor, working together to put a proper system for the entrepreneur to be able to move as quick as possible through that journey from just an idea all the way to be a product and go into the market. I think there is some job on the system and into the ecosystem, but there is also a job and things to be done by the entrepreneur to listen and try to learn and take advantage of the system and take advantage, let me say, of the available resources and available programs that will help him to actually accelerate in a timely manner. I have to really thank all the panelists. We have another panel with the startups, and in here I would really thank all the panelists, and I will ask you to remain with us for the Q&A sessions at the end. I would like to welcome my distinguished colleague Talal Al-Qaisi, the advisor of strategic progress at the UAE Space Agency, to moderate the panel with the UAE space startups. Talal, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nasser. So in keeping with the theme today, while we transition, what I'm going to try to do with this panel, since we're talking to startups and companies, is get their perspective and ensure that we try to address some of the key aspects that we are going to be facing in the next few months, especially on an industry and a startup level. And since that's what we're focused on, I think it's only fitting to have someone like Alan Herbert from Nanorax start, since Nanorax is a US company. They've established a presence here in the UAE. They've had confidence in the potential for their business to grow here. And so with the new big elephant in the room that there's no escaping in COVID and the COVID-19 situation, I'd like to know, Alan, from your perspective, how do you feel that's going to impact not just Nanorax, but most industries? Since you're coming from a hotbed of space industry activity in the US, how is that going to impact the industry of space at large? And as an international space enabler, how is it going to be impacting you, or how are you thinking of tackling that or pivoting from your current model to adapt to these new realities that we're facing?
Well, thank you, everyone. A great afternoon here. I'm glad to be on with such a distinguished guest. Thank you, Talal. Yeah, it is an elephant in the room. I mean, we're all in our houses right now on this. Otherwise, we'd be at Krypto Lab sitting in the chairs. So this is really important that we talk about this. Well, starting with NanoRacks, we were designated an essential company in Texas because we're based in Texas. So we were able to continue working even though a lot of people have moved out of the offices and are working from home, but we were considered an essential company by the government. One of the things we've done and are doing is the government has become a customer more and more for us in partnering. That means not just NASA. Everybody says, you think of government and space is NASA, NASA, NASA. No, it's not just NASA. We're looking at partnering with USDA, United States Department of Agriculture. We have DOD. Someone just mentioned DOD there. That's huge for us right now. National Science Foundation, HHS. There's all types of different government entities that you can partner with. So you have to look at that. You can't be a one-trick pony, as they call it. Then the next thing is international. We're here in the UAE because we see this as a center, as a hub for research, as a hub for business development. I call Etihad and Emirates my shuttles to the world. Because in the US to fly from the US to here, and then fly to Asia, it takes a lot of time and a lot of wherewithal. Now with the offices here, which I'm here right now, with everybody else, it's easier to move around the world. And that's what I really like about being here also. There's other factors too. So we're looking at working more internationally. We're working with ESA. ESA right now, as many of you know, they're looking to see after COVID-19, they're asking for ideas. So we have an office in Italy, an independent office in Italy, and they're looking to do things with ESA. And so we're looking at here, the UAE, all across the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. Then another factor is education. You have to look at, if you're a business, you have to look at, okay, where are we right now? What is happening right now? How can I make things happen right now? How can I bring in revenues right now? And one of the things that's happened, we have a subsidiary, education subsidiary called DreamUp. It was just a part of NanoRacks, where we work with K through 12 universities to get payloads up in competition. Well, when the whole COVID-19 happened, all the kids are at home. We have 60 million kids in the US, just in the US, at home. Our website went up daily 850% of hits. So you say, oh, so there's an opportunity there for education. If you're dealing with education or anything else, look at the opportunity that you have right now. And because it's not going to change everybody. Everybody knows that because of COVID-19, everything's going to be different in the future. And you have to ride that wave and see, you have to really see into the future for that. Then the fourth thing is, I'm passionate about, who know me, I'm passionate about agriculture and education, for one. I see agriculture, food security as a basic thing, especially in this region, because my region is Africa, Middle East, and South Asia, where 2/3 of the world's population will reside in 2100. And right now, even in the US, you see disruptions happening in food security. So space has a whole lot to do with food security. And so we're looking at how we can partner with people here around the world. And even in the US right now, we just partnered with the university to look at, this is before this all blew up, how they can help astronauts' immune system with viruses with extracts from plants. This was 2 months ago we signed this. And so they're way ahead on this right now. So education and culture to me is one of the big things. Then the last thing, Talal, you asked about how the different companies are doing, what's going on. I don't want to keep going with all the different companies, but I think there's an opportunity here. And on May 27th, mark that on your calendars. That will be the first, SpaceX is sending the first humans to the space station from the United States. That is going to be huge for the space sector. I'm looking at that. Mark your calendars on May 1st for they're going to have a talk about that. But that is going to really, because of everything that's happening right now around the world, everybody needs to see some hope. And that's going to really bring a lot of people hope. And I think once they go up, the tourism thing, a lot of different things are going to be happening. And I think a lot of companies in the US, they're even retooling their stuff to help with COVID-19. Virgin Galactic is making ventilators, all kinds, Uae Space is making masks. I mean, they're retooling themselves to get through COVID-19, which is not going to last forever, but they're looking how they can be a part of it, pretty much. But I really feel that I'm confident. I really feel that after this, the May 27 launch and other things that are happening, there's going to be a lot going on, not just in the US, because I'm based here. I think it's going to give a lot of confidence with companies here to do a lot of different things and not to get stuck in the same. Satellites are important. Satellites make the internet, they do GPS, we all need that. But watch what happens with the new stuff with biopharmaceuticals, with agriculture, with all kinds of different things that people with marketing, people that don't really think about right now. There's going to be a lot of new stuff going on, so I'm excited.
Yeah, it is exciting, and you think you want to have that inspirational value and that hope that's projected to the youth across the world to inspire and to encourage them to continue to pursue their dreams and their passions, especially if those are related to space, and that space is going to be extremely pivotal at these times. One of the things we have going on right now is we're leading up to the Mars mission, which is supposed to launch. It's called the Hope Probe, and so we're hoping that we're going to be able to launch on time in July of this year, and we're doing everything we can to ensure that happens, and measures have been taken to maximize that potential, which is great. But you said something about agriculture that really caught my attention, because there is a parallel and a correlation there between what space can do to enable the agriculture community. Dr. Ali, your startup is actually in the agriculture space. So, and your mission and scope is somewhat locked in, but since you're still nimble enough to be versatile, how are you transforming the challenge of the COVID situation to an opportunity and part of the value proposition that you're going to present to end users in the industry that you're serving?
Thank you, Talal, for this question. And thank you, Alan, for going over all of this information. It was really useful and helpful. Actually, well, as a start, UAE has been very instrumental and has made significant intervention in response to COVID. So I think businesses should be no different than this. They should be rapidly adjusting. And as an observation, as we saw, those who push toward digitization are now far more prepared and pandemic resilient. And for sure, they will be the first to recover from this. So for us, Farming, we are in the business of artificial intelligence-based remote sensing in both agriculture and landscape. So agriculture is a huge part of what we do. And for those who don't know about remote sensing, you probably have seen lots of comparisons for land and emissions and pictures before and during the COVID-19 situation. So this shows the importance of remote sensing, and it raises awareness about what remote sensing is. So for us, for example, we are trying to push toward using more remote sensing in agriculture. So one of the objectives, for example, of what we do is we want to minimize physical presence and physical inspection of farms and land. So for example, farmer wants information about his land, about his farm, then he can collect all of this information remotely, and he can monitor all of these systems remotely. So he can get information, let's say fertilization level, water level, plant health, when is he expecting to harvest, and so on. And in the same time, government don't need to inspect, and so in the same time, they can collect all of these information remote. So we are trying to see where the opportunities of all of this lie, and we are trying to push toward maximization of agricultural output and minimization of resources wastage. So coming out of all of this, there will be definitely a huge push toward digitization and remote operation. And so this is where we believe all the opportunities lies on, and this is where we are trying to position our scope and objective in. For sure, government will want to be more prepared for any future situation. So this is probably where we see the innovation in terms of food security, in terms of online learning. Again, I expect lots of creative startups to come out of this pandemic. So hopefully we'll have many here in UAE, and inshallah we'll collaborate in many, especially in agriculture region.
Thanks. No, I appreciate that. And definitely the theme of agility is going to be what's most important with many of the existing companies. And obviously you're well positioned to take advantage of that and create an opportunity here. Remote operations is going to be extremely important. And that's not only something that space can support from an agriculture standpoint, but even other industries are going to benefit from this too, including the energy sector and mining. So, Dr. Prashant, I know you've founded several companies before and are a professor as well, and you're used to helping students spin off companies. What would your advice be for young, passionate entrepreneurs in this unpredictable environment and how they can continue to pursue that aspiration?
It's not actually unpredictable, Talal. Now, if you look at the investments over the last couple of years, a big chunk of the investments went into NewSpace startups in creation of space assets. So those things will be materialized in the coming years, let's say, if not immediately done. And those assets will start creating a lot of data flow. And there should be someone on ground to actually make use of the data and create applications. And neat example here is, for example, it was Garmin and TomTom, which actually got all those GPS utilities to end users. And they made more revenue than probably the original technology developers and so on. Now, that type of things, there are a lot of things happening. If you look at the market segment now, it's like there was a significant investment in IoT constellations, significant investment in Earth observation constellations. Ali's company, Farmin, is one good example of trying to utilize this type of information for farming. Now imagine adding more sensors on ground and connecting with IoT-based satellites. That's another application that could be developed. You can improve many more things. There's a lot more innovation that has to come up. And I mean, one if you're talking about advisors, including me, it's like for now, if you already started doing things, try to get more mature with your offerings. That's one thing, because I see that there's a lot of discussion on TRLs. In the end, it's all about what you can offer and how mature you are in terms of deploying your offering from day one once you get in touch with the client. That's first thing. So this is a good time to start maturing. And the second thing is, it's like if you're yet to start and you're looking at a very bright idea, step back a bit. See what happened in terms of creation of assets in space in the last couple of years, where the investment went in, and what type of data will flow. If you're looking at data flow options, or it's not just about data analytics. Developing hardware. If you're talking about this IoT devices or satellite data reception things and so on, an integrated hardware platform that can combine all these things is a neat application. For instance, for a specific end use case. So those type of things can happen. So we need to get back. Maybe it's like we can all look into creating a little survey in terms of what assets have been in place over the last couple of years, and what type of information can possibly come in the next few years now, and what type of applications that can come up. These type of things we can look into, and I'm sure there are more opportunities. I'm a lot more positive than actually being negative here.
Well, that's a good thing, and we need more positivity these days for sure. And I agree with you. There's certainly an opportunity to be created by the situation. It seems space could enable certain efficiencies and applications that could be useful. I'm curious though, since the international economic picture is not looking too good, and seeing that a critical piece of our industry is dependent on launch, and launch requires demand and cost innovation. Andre, the business that you're in with Precious Payload, can you tell me how, if you can provide any thoughts on the impact you foresee to the launch industry at large, and then with your particular business, how are you looking to adapt?
Yeah, thanks, Talal. Thanks for asking this question. Yeah, so first of all, just a sentence about how we are related to the launch industry. So we operate an online software at preciouspayload.com, which helps you to manage your space missions online using using the software that you can use from your laptop, from your home and your office environment. And that's where you can actually see your supply chain at the bird's eye view and understands what risks are in the current situation. Yeah, and in terms of the launch industry, our first MVP product was about connecting the space missions from universities and governments and the startups with the launch company. So we created launch booking systems. So we are every day in touch with almost 80% of the launch market globally. So from Japan, China to India to Europe and United States, and all the prominent startups that claim that they're gonna launch soon. So yeah, what we see is the reality is that the traditional supply chain was always about, hey, we'll take the satellite, we'll ship it to one integration facility, we'll do some work there, then we'll ship it to the launch sites, and we'll do something there, and then we'll launch it, we'll mate it to the launch vehicle and launch it. And of course, in the current circumstances, almost all the existing contracts that have been signed before have this clause about the presence of the clients at every integration facility on the journey of satellite from your lab to space. And of course, in the current situation, no one is able to actually be physically present together with the satellite during these operations and testing. So what we can see among our customers is that, of course, everyone is trying to cope with the situation and renegotiate the contracts. And but a lot of projects are actually stuck, so they're not moving and just waiting for the travel ban to be lifted, so they will be able to advance the project to the next stage. And at the same time, we can see that at least the US companies, as Alan said, they were pronounced as essential. As again, I said in previous webinar, space industry is a part of the overall defense and critical infrastructure in majority of the countries. That's where we can see a lot of companies like Firefly Aerospace, Virgin Orbits, Astra, and some others are on a good track to launching their first commercial rockets, commercial launches this year. And I think they have really good chance of succeeding in that. And apart from that, you see Chinese private companies doing the launches frequently. You see Rocket Lab routinely doing the launches. And of course, the big elephant in the room is SpaceX, who announced their small satellite share program a couple of months ago and are preparing to actually launch the first customers in a few months. So yeah, that's like an overview of what's going on in the launch industry and how it has been impacted by the current situation. And as of us, I think you can see that in the current situation, there are businesses that actually thrive due to the nature of their business. And I think we're lucky enough that our core value since the very first months in this industry, since 2017, has always been that we, A, are being the remote first company, and B, our value proposition was always that you can connect, transact, and exchange technical information without leaving your office. So we actually see the surge of partners who come to us and connect with our software platform. We can see a surge of customers who are coming to us, and the investors as well. They understood that the industry has frozen, and this is the opportunity for us to step in and to let customers and partners rethink.
Can everyone hear Andre? I lost him for a second.
Yeah, I can hear you. So at least that's working. Can you hear me, Talal?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, and just to end, just to conclude, I've heard like we have here more than 10 people all supporting the UAE space economy, and I must say that I'm the user of all these efforts, and I must say that to the audience and to all the participants here, that's what this, ladies and gentlemen, are claiming is actually working. So I've been through the government acceleration program. Nasser and Talal has been really instrumental in the success that we have now. And yeah, so we are using all the government initiatives. We're using the capital provider acceleration program, and we have 3 commercial contracts now in this country with the existing satellite missions. And it's actually working. So you guys have to listen to this panelists and engage with them. And it's so real. It's not like fantasy talking. It's it's actually working.
I'll tell you what, Andre. The only reason it's working is because we listen to you. So thank you for supporter to the industry and informing our decisions. We look to you for feedback, and we're very proud to have a company like yours here, and everyone else who has a space startup that we need to learn from. But I appreciate that. I appreciate your answer. It doesn't look as grim as I thought it would be, at least from a launch industry perspective, which is a good thing. I'd like to, before we go to questions, maybe Dr. Mohammed, since you're on the line and you're well positioned to help us inspire the confidence in young entrepreneurs who are on the fence at the moment. Your personal journey and experience is a testament of that. You've done this, you've been there, done that several times. You've had some failures along the way, as we learned in your other presentation, which you learned from and used as a catalyst to propel you. Can you offer a few closing words of advice to the entrepreneurs in the audience?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, this is a great panel session that we're having, and I thank Krypto Labs and the UAE Space Agency for putting it all together. And we have great entrepreneurs over here as well. So I'm going to be directing my answer to the public over here, and we have about more than 155 participants. One message to you: just do it. And the COVID situation is the perfect situation for you. Because you don't have to be going into several different offices just to brainstorm ideas. You have all the participants right now. Get together, discuss your ideas, learn new tools and learn new skills, because many of you are probably graduating, and I could see some of the questions, and many of you were asking questions about the TRL. So if you think that you don't have the necessary skill to do something, now is the best time to learn. Should you think that your idea is actually worth the NewSpace program, apply for it. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? One of the great quotes actually that I live by, at least, it's from Mark Zuckerberg. It's that taking no risk is the worst risk of all. So just do it. At the end of the day, should you want to start your own space startup in education, like I have, should you want to have a space startup in propulsion systems, in launching, you have Andre over here. I mean, you have so many entrepreneurs over here who are actually willing to help and give you advices as well. So do get in touch with people, do get in touch with experts, come to more seminars and webinars right now. You can just literally get access to information from your home, and this is the perfect time to start your own startup. I was seeing that, and obviously Google and Apple, they have recently launched this whole Fight COVID initiative. Guess what? This is dependent. Obviously, they're going to be getting all the data, but it is, at the end of the day, relying on space technologies. Everything nowadays, I mean, right now we're talking through Zoom, and I can bet you that we have a lot of space technologies also embedded in this one. The camera that we're using, that's also based on space technology. So you cannot deny space technology there. And as Dr. Prashant was talking about, we have plenty of opportunities. Do not let it go. And now is the time, and time is your best asset. So hoping to see more startups, and do let me know if you have any questions.
Great. Well, thank you, Dr. Adnan. Inspirational words indeed. And it is taking some getting used to, where you can feel as though you've traveled to several different places. I was in Washington, D.C. yesterday. I'm going to Houston next after this, in terms of where I am with the webinars. But the one thing that I still can't get used to is the fact that we can't applaud after such a statement and in between sessions, or stand up and walk around like we typically do. So this is a new normal that we're getting used to right now. With that, I really appreciate the time the panelists have spent in giving their insight to the situation here. I'd like to ask Hanan how we would do the questions and answers, because I've answered a few that were online. What's the best mechanism to take a few questions before we wrap up for both panels?
Thank you, Talal. Actually, most of the questions has been addressed. We just have one for NanoRacks and one for you who wants to connect to you. So if you could please, Alan, if you could address that, and Talal, if you could answer that privately. Thank you.
Yeah, so Alan, the question to NanoRacks was about the corporate structure that you used to establish here in the UAE, and if you needed any special permissions from the US government in order to do so, with export control restrictions or otherwise. You're on mute, Alan. You're on mute, yeah.
Okay, here we go. No, not at all. We went through a free zone ADGM. We're at Hub 71 also. We had been there for a while, and that's what I would recommend some of the new startups, if you're coming from another country, to look at the free zones here. But now it's become easier and easier to start a company here in the UAE. And so it wasn't that hard for us at all, pretty much. But there were no export controls or anything like that that we had to do. There was nothing like that. No.
Yeah, and I can say in experience that typically when companies want to start here, it's a very facilitated process. I think, I don't know if Salam is still here from DED, but the way to do it is very, very streamlined. So you're in a free zone or choosing not to be in a free zone, it doesn't really matter. As long as you have a company that you're interested in bringing to the UAE, we can facilitate where you need to go. We've got arrangements with different value providers that could support your entry into the market.
I see a question about STEM education, one of the questions, and so it's saying that is there other programs related to STEM or STEAM education that the Space Agency is doing except for the one with NASA? Yes, for sure. We actually sometimes have our own, but also most likely we work with partners in the country and outside the country. So we are doing a number of STEAM and STEM camps, as well as trainings, working with the center in Al Ain, NTSEC, as well as also Sharjah SCAS, or now it's called Sharjah Academy for Space and Astronomy, as well as also sometimes with other partners, like for example Compass and other entities who are working on education, but then we actually focus on STEM or STEAM that is related into space with some practical experience for the students. So it's not only, of course, with NASA, and we're also having partners in Europe as well as in Asia that we are working in with number of camps related to STEM, for example, with the UK Space Agency, as well as now we're discussing with the European Space Agency, but also previously with JAXA.
Yeah, there was another question also regarding IP, and I think the best way to answer that would be that there is a mechanism for you to be able to register your patents here. The Ministry of Economy and the UAE on a federal level have a mechanism through their International Patent Center. So that would be your go-to place. And I think the Department of Economic Development, where Salam works, also has a certain mechanism too. But feel free to get in touch with us if it's a space-related IP technology and you're interested, then we'll facilitate that for you. This was to Sumit Vardan.
I'm just thinking here for something to take away from this session. I think we deserve to have a good session with DED for space entrepreneurs on two topics. One is TRL and the other one is an IP.
Yeah.
I think also just to add there, you see, we're hoping, as Nasser said when we introduced the aspect, we're hoping to make this a series, and have this be something that we continue, so that we, keep in contact with you guys. We want to try and bring you new concepts, new ideas, new speakers, new experiences. So, I guess in your chat, we'll try and keep that open as well past the time so that we can capture. So if you guys out there have any ideas, any interests, any specific subject that you'd like for us to cover and maybe bring the experts in, whether locally or from other government sectors, to be able to support and facilitate, please put your comments in, and we can actually capture all those, and we can consider that for future such sessions.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
All right. So I think we've covered, we've answered about 62 questions from what I see. It's a great, thank you all so much for that. I don't know, is somebody here giving a closing remark? Or Nasser, you wanna take the stand on that? And we won't close like we did last time, so we know we're still live.
I have to restate a point mentioned earlier by you as well as by Talal. I think you emphasized the point about partnership and partner. Whether you are an entrepreneur or you are a government or you are a fund or you are an investor, it's really through a partnership. It's really through a collaboration and networking, and the will of working with others and learning and collaborating. I think this is the real success recipe in here. And the second point stated by Talal was that when he thanked Andre, that's saying we probably doing well because we got it from you, because this is the truth. Our startups today are the champions for the acceleration program. They are the champions of this new space innovation programs because they are the ones who have the real experience on an entrepreneur experience and so on. And without their feedback, without their support, without their sharing kindly their experiences and the lessons learned, we won't be able to create this ecosystem. Without even their criticism of how can we improve things, we wouldn't be able in position to improve things. So I have to really salute everyone and thank you all. Thanks to all the panelists, and your contribution has been great. The questions that we have received were amazing, and I'm really astonished by Talal and Hanan and Fahad and how they were able to manage answering the 62 questions in no time. So, and I keep in mind a couple of points at the end. One is that the point made by Muhammad, Mr. Fahad, is that please put the agenda for us for the next webinar. So we make sure that we answer the critical questions that you have in appropriate time, and with even bringing the experts who can actually find things. And the second one is that this is going to be a recorded session. So of course, if you would like to refer back to it or even share it with your colleagues, those that you think will be interested, it will always be there for you. Thank you again. And I think with this, if you allow me all, I would like to bring this webinar to an adjoint.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nasser.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you.
We should all unmute and clap just so that we can feel it's a little normal.